Hello and welcome to this UnAwards Winners webinar special. Thank you so much for joining us. We've had bumper interest in this webinar with well over 300 people signing up. So great to see so many of you interested in this. So thanks for joining. We've got an amazing session lined up for you. We've got 8 winners who will be sharing the lessons and the insights behind their winning work. I'll run through them all shortly. What we'll then do is we'll run a panel Q&A with all of them afterwards, so you get the chance to fire in your questions and your feedback. So Danielle and I will walk you through that as we go through. And big thanks to Danielle and Cam Digital for helping to host this session today and to get it all organised. Really helps me. And big thanks too to Gemma at Orlo. It was actually her idea to run this webinar when we had a coffee last year. So no idea why I haven't done that before. So thank you to Gemma for the idea. We are recording the session and that will be shared with anyone that's signed up. So just to remind you a little bit of the background on the UnAwards, the 10th annual Run Awards ran last year and we had a bumper number of entries. We had 593 entries to the UnAwards last year, which, believe it or not, was a record equaling number, equal to the number we had in the previous year. So we're really aiming for 600 this year, and with over 300 of you signed up, that only takes 2 entries from each of you to hit our target of 600. So we had 24 winners across the 22 categories with 31 highly commended entries. We had over 2,500 public votes as well, because 3 of the categories are decided by you, the great British comms public. And then we've got a whole team of 35 independent judges. So I don't get involved in the judging. There's a team of judges that select our winners. Now, a reminder of comms files. So comms files, you'll find that on the homepage of the Comms 2.0 website. And again, thanks to UnAwards partners, Cam Digital, who provide the platform, we've got access to an absolute treasure trove of comms goodness. So almost all of the entries over the years have gone into comms files. So we've got over 3,000 resources in there now. So they're entries, they're materials, resources, all sorts of things that are free to access. And what I always say is, before you start any piece of work or campaign, don't start from scratch. Go and have a look in comms files first, because probably someone somewhere has done a similar piece of work before and you can learn from that. Other things to say is, don't forget that the 11th annual UnAwards will open on the 1st of September. So that's coming around quite quickly now, isn't it? So do be thinking about what you'll be entering. It is free and it is easy to enter the UnAwards. They're the most accessible awards out there. So do have a think about what you'll enter. They'll open on the 1st of September and they'll close just before the end of October. Now, a big thank you to our partners and sponsors for the UnAwards and the UnAwards Winners Masterclass this year. I've said it before, I'll say it again, the UnAwards would not exist without these people. So a big thanks to the support that you give, not just to the UnAwards and to myself, but to the comms industry in general. It's really very much appreciated. So I will run you through now just very quickly our glittering array of stars who will be presenting today. So we have 8 of them. First up, we have for Best Internal Comms, we have Darren and Sanchia from the London Borough of Havering. Then we have Best Social Media Account, which is Christina from Norfolk County Council. We have Best Behaviour Change winner, which is Sibi from the National Crime Agency. For Best Small Team, we have Alex and Matt from Priory Group. Best Creative Comms is Charlotte Parker from Bedfordshire Police. Best Use of Data, that's Sean from Surrey County Council. Best Collaboration will be presented by Shafali and Will from, again, the London Borough of Havering. And finally, Best Use of Research and Evaluation will be Alex Rippon from the National Crime Agency. So thanks very much to all of our speakers, and let's dive in now and hear the amazing work which will follow. Right, first up, we will hear the winners for Best Internal Comms, which is Darren and Sanchia from the London Borough of Havering. Over to you, team.
Hello everyone, my name's Darren Bindloss. I'm Deputy Head of Communications at Havering Council.
Hi everybody, I'm Sanchia Cook. I am the Internal Communications Manager at Havering.
And it's great to be part of the UnAwards Winners webinar and to share details of our internal communications campaign, Big Tickets, which won Best Internal Communications at the 10th Annual UnAwards. So a bit of detail on the campaign as to why it was needed and what its objectives were. So Havering, like many councils across the country, is struggling with its finances due to the huge demand we have for our services, particularly for social care services and housing, temporary accommodation. We are unable to set the legally required balanced budget. So we are on the brink of issuing a Section 114 notice. A Section 114 notice, sometimes referred to as councils going bankrupt, but essentially it would restrict spending to statutory services, along with the worrying implications that will have for Havering staff and their jobs, and Havering residents and their services. So the campaign had four main objectives. The first was to explain and be very transparent with our staff of the financial challenges that we face and what they could do to help. The second objective is to reassure our staff. The council doesn't want to be setting a Section 114 notice, so we are applying to the government for exceptional financial support. But this was out of our hands, and the outcome was very uncertain. So we were going to keep staff involved all throughout the budget setting process. But also we wanted staff to be part of the solution. So we were looking for saving suggestions from our staff. And in councils like Havering, the easy picking saving suggestions had long gone. So with our project team, which involved finance and our executive leadership team, we were looking to see if we could identify 500,000 of new savings and cash them. The inspiration for Big Tickets came from our Chief Financial Officer, who referred in a webinar to needing the big ticket saving suggestion from our staff. So we ran with this idea of tickets very much in a transport theme, which would highlight the main two aspects of the campaign. The first was to take Havering staff on a journey, and sometimes in Havering it does feel like we've been on more journeys than Phileas Fogg, but hopefully the destination for this one will be successful and it would end up with us receiving exceptional financial support. And the other aspect to the campaign is this call to action for staff to give us their saving suggestions that would help save £50,000 or more. Why £50,000? Well, we had a long discussion about this at the start of the campaign, whether we should set this limit, whether it should be lower. We went with 50,000, which was in hindsight the correct amount, because it gave us the opportunity to really look in detail at all of the saving suggestions that were coming through from our staff. And the other aspect to receiving tickets was for every ticket that we receive, we'll be able to publish it, but then we'd also be able to publish a return ticket as well after the project team had looked in detail at the individual savings that came through. So, for example, whether this was going to be a viable saving, whether it had already been taken, or actually whether it wouldn't lead to any savings at all. And what we did, we published all of these tickets, the return tickets, and the tickets that we received across all of our channels, and asked for more tickets.
Thank you, Darren. So now I'll be talking you through some of the tactics we used to reach staff. So just touching on a few. One of the most effective things we did was actually use our screensavers. These obviously appear on everybody's laptop and had an 89% reach, which made them one of our most successful channels because staff couldn't really miss them when they logged in the morning. We also used weekly email and chief executive updates to keep staff informed throughout the campaign. These had around a 52% reach. We also ran our Let's Talk webinar sessions where staff could hear directly about the financial challenges and also ask questions, promoting that two-way dialogue between staff and leadership. We had around 900 people attend just one of our webinars, which was a huge level of engagement. We then tried some different approaches. So, for example, we piloted our WhatsApp channel during this campaign. This grew to around 450 followers on our WhatsApp channel, and helped us also target our off-network staff. Another key element was launching our save and suggestion scheme, so to give staff a direct route to share ideas on how we could save money. When we first launched the Save and Suggestion scheme, we actually didn't receive that many ideas, and we could sense there was some hesitancy from staff. Some weren't sure, how their ideas would be received or whether they should even be commenting on areas outside of their own teams. So we adjusted the process slightly. We made the submission process anonymous, which helped people feel more comfortable, and we also brought in strategic directors, so suggestions could be looked at a more strategic level across the organisation. Once we made them changes, the floodgates really opened for us, and we started to receive many, many more suggestions. And most importantly, some of them were really strong ideas that we used going forward. Next slide, please, Darren. Even though we did that, of course, not every suggestion was realistic, and we had a few more creative suggestions as well. So, for example, someone suggested bringing back the old pantry canteen in the town hall. In reality, we had actually already closed it because it wasn't making us any money. And another suggestion was we should invest in solar farms and sell renewable energy, which, might sound interesting, but some other councils had actually tried similar approaches and ended up running up a significant debt. But honestly, in our opinion, that didn't really matter. The important thing was that people were engaged and wanted to contribute ideas and be a part of helping the council to deal with our financial pressures. And that was a really positive outcome of the campaign. So just to share some of our overall results, in terms of awareness, almost 2,900 staff attended the webinars that we put on. We also asked staff how they felt about the financial situation. 92% said they felt reassured and were not concerned about their jobs. Throughout our saving suggestion scheme, we received 238 suggestions from staff, and of those, 123 ideas were carefully reviewed and considered. And then finally, the campaign itself was delivered at a very low cost. We only spent around £300 in our money. So I'm just going to hand back to Darren to share our outcomes.
Yeah, thanks, Edja. So the impact of big tickets went beyond communications outputs. So in terms of outcomes, after a staff suggestion about how we could save money on agency worker fees, which I think resulted into switching payroll arrangements, we managed to save over £200,000. Lots of members of our adult social care team put in the same suggestion effectively of clawing back social care direct payments, which have saved over £1 million. We've followed other local authorities by introducing council tax premiums for empty homes, and this has been a reoccurring saving, so that gets saved every year and has been built into part of our budget. We are doing a lot more with social value. So a few members of staff told us how we could make more use of social values with contracts. And this coincided with arrival of our new head of procurement, who's really run with this and made it work. And overall, in the final analysis, our finance team tell us that we have saved 1.67 million. We were successful in receiving exceptional financial support from government, and we still haven't issued a Section 114. Just finally, what the judges said about the campaign. So it's great to have some independent views on our work. Really encouraging that the judges picked up on shifting internal culture. So previously, the responsibility for savings in Havering very much was the responsibility of senior officers. But what we've done is, for anyone who's interested in putting forward their own ideas, we've given them a voice, and we've democratised savings. And the volume of savings, I think it was nearly 240 suggestions that came through. At times it was overwhelming, because we wanted to go back and provide responses to the members of staff on their suggestions, and it was comms, obviously, who was doing the legwork. But overall, what it showed is a council that, in responding to the financial challenges, is really in it together and wants to do all it can as it works through these financial pressures. Here are our contact details if anyone wants to get in touch with us. And yeah, thanks very much for listening.
Thanks so much, Darren and Sanchia, for that. That was fantastic. And don't forget, questions we can put into the chat at the end of the presentations. So second up, we've got best social media accounts, and we have Christina Fox from Norfolk County Council. So over to you, Christina.
Hi there, I'm Christina from Norfolk County Council, and I won the award for the Norfolk Send Local Offer Facebook page. So I'm sure Send will be familiar to lots of you. Perhaps you have children and people at home, or in your family, or you've worked in the area of Send. But if you don't know about it, it relates to special educational needs and disabilities, and it relates to children and young people from birth through to the age of 25. And it's all about the services and provision that are available to support children at school and to achieve their potential throughout their lives. You're probably also aware that it is massively contentious at the moment on the national scale. So lots of people have used the terminology that the SEND system is broken nationally. And as a result of that, the government has put together some proposals to reform SEND this year, and those have been contentious. So it's all kind of a very contentious area. But what it means is that a lot of children and young people are being failed by the system. They're not getting the support they need, and it's massively affecting their life chances. And so as a result, their parents and carers, in terms of thinking about what's happening with our audience here, their parents and carers are feeling very frustrated in lots of instances. They're really fed up with the system. They're feeling really exhausted by trying to fight for support, and they don't trust locally or nationally messaging that's coming out from the council or the government around how their children can be supported. And that makes it really tricky to do comms around this, because whatever we say locally, is being drowned out by these kind of very noisy national messages. And also it's really difficult for Norfolk to kind of fix or make better a lot of this stuff when things aren't working on the national scale. So that's the kind of backdrop and the context that I've been working in it. And it has been quite a tricky audience. But nevertheless, my remit here was to build trust and confidence amongst parents and carers in Norfolk, create connection with them and strengthen their knowledge and understanding, because that's a real thing with SEND, is that it's quite complicated. There's loads of jargon, there's loads of acronyms, there's loads of legal language, and it's quite a lot for parents and carers to kind of have to navigate and digest and grip. So we really want to help them to strengthen their knowledge of understanding of all the different kind of processes that might affect support for their child. So just moving on. So what I've done really is tried to capture 10 kind of the top things I did that made my account successful. So here's the first 5. So the first one is research and planning. I bet, obviously all of you would carry out research and planning before you undertake a project. What really worked for me was spending some significant time going through cabinet reports and Norfolk County Council service reports, and really kind of getting into the detail and the nitty-gritty of like what was happening with SEND services in Norfolk, where the gaps are, what the realities are. I did lots of channel auditing and in-depth social media auditing. And one of the things that really worked for me was doing some persona interviews. So I took parents and carers in all different types of situations. So parents and carers with a child with really high needs in a special school, parents and carers with less child with less high needs in mainstream, and or high needs in mainstream. And I used a set of questions, template questions, and I looked at what united them, what their common frustrations are, what they're looking for, what their preferred channels are, and really kind of dug in so that I knew what would resonate with the audience. Number 2 was strategy. Obviously, again, all of you probably put together a strategy if you're doing a piece of work. So I did do that. I created this real kind of biblical tome of a strategy. But what really worked for me was making it a one-pager, pulling a one-pager out so that non-comms folk and leaders could engage with the strategy and really get to know what we were doing and what we weren't doing, and understand that. So, it's one thing to have a strategy for us to follow in our comms work, but it's another thing to have one that helps everyone else engage with it, because you really need that buy-in. And so my strategy was really about know, like, trust and act. So creating content that gets our audience to know and like us, so they then over time begin to trust more of what we're saying, and then laying the foundation for behaviour change and getting them to act and maybe do some things differently. My number 3 thing that I did was creating strong relationships. So I created this really strong network of relationships, which continues to be of great benefit in the work. So I got officers at sort of all levels of the hierarchy at the council. So I've got some more junior officers who are at the front line of SEND, who deal with families every day and really have their ear to the ground. And I meet them once a week for an hour to really kind of get that knowledge, right up to the director of SEND, who has a crazy busy diary. And I make sure I shoehorn myself into her diary for half an hour a fortnight so that she knows what I am doing, what I'm not doing, and why, and she can kind of fight battles in the rooms where I'm not, and have confidence in the work. And particularly if you have like kind of counsellors sometimes getting worried about some things, she's there, and she knows all about it. Number 4, focusing on one platform. This has served me well. I've really focused on Facebook. You can dig into my strategy if you're interested to why I made that decision, but I'm really, really committed to Facebook. So that's meant that I do a lot of posting natively, and I really understand like the culture of the platform, how it works, what's going to work for me, what's not going to work for me. And I think it really helps to do better work and really target. And it's been realistic for my capacity as well, because I work 4 days a week and I only have 2 days a week on social media. The other 2 days I have to kind of do all the other stuff. So it's realistic for my capacity and what I can do well. Number 5 is people-centered content plan. So I use a great framework that I learned about on the Comms Creatives course that I did at social media. Really recommend it. And it's called Be Epic, and it's basically about creating a content mix over any given week, which allows you to cover a blend of social behaviours and keep your audience really interested in mixing it up. So the B is behind the scenes, so you're kind of like digging into, what does good support look like in a mainstream classroom, give behind the scenes glimpses through video or picture stories. The E is educate, so that's about breaking down those complicated processes in SEND and educating people about how things work. The other E is entertain. I don't tend to do a lot of entertaining content, but what I do is lighter-hearted, human content, which creates connection and shows our audience that we get where they are and what's affecting them. The P is promoting activities and events and support for them. The I is inspire, inspiring stories about what it can look like when it's going well. And the C is around chat and always regularly creating content that gets people talking to you and creating conversations. And all of that is delivered through a mix of video, picture stories, infographic explainers, which I've had a lot of success with. Infographic explainers really kind of help you to break down complicated processes or ideas. And it kind of works a bit like Instagram, where you have like images and you get your audience to swipe through them. So if someone needs to know, how do I access speech and language therapy for my child, what does that look like, we can break it down in an infographic explainer, how you get it, what it is, how it works, what you do if it stopped working for you. So that's really worked for me. Number 6 on my next one is people and policy. So I always make sure that my storytelling is as authentic as it can possibly be, and that most of the faces there, or a lot of the faces, are parents, their children, their teachers, their support professionals. So I don't just rely on Norfolk County Council officers or councillors talking about everything all the time. I have people in there that our audience can really connect with, and that really kind of helps to amplify our message. And I'm talking about SEND reform, what it looks like in Norfolk, helping people make sense of it, explaining those processes, building that confidence, and then signposting to support. It's kind of my typical content mix. Number 7 is engaging and listening. So I actively respond to all the comments that people put on the posts and try and get in a conversation with them about that. But beyond that, I try and use all the information from those comments, whether it's negative or positive, and feed it back into services. So the work is kind of having an impact beyond comms. So we're feeding back how parents are really feeling about certain services. And also it feeds back into the content plan. So I'm always creating content that I know people are talking about in the moment. So we're meeting people where they are about what they're worried about, not what we say is important all the time. And I also do regular social media listening. I join Facebook groups, I listen to what they're talking about, and I allow that to lead me in some of the content creation as well. Number 8 is being a good friend. So Send is a multi-agency gig. And I consistently spend time online liking and commenting on partnership Facebook pages and groups to support them, and I support some of their content in our feed, and they do the same. And so now quite a lot of the real movers and shakers in Norfolk in the world of Send will share my content, and so it's getting that much wider audience because it's creating that network online. Number 9 is continuous evaluation. I won't say too much about that because I'm conscious of time, but evaluation is built in, it's not bolted on, and I have a little framework that I use to really make sure I'm looking closely every month at what's bombing, what's working, and I'm kind of like dynamically tweaking things as we go along. What surprised me and how it's behaved online, those types of things. And I also have a parent-carer comms group, and I run a lot of stuff past them on a regular basis. They meet once every half term. That's super useful. But my kind of really big one for number 10 is progress, not perfection. And this is another comms creatives mantra where, it's quite scary sometimes, like getting out there and putting stuff out on social media, especially if it's an audience where you're quite concerned about getting it wrong and, there's frustrations are high. So I make my plans as best I can make them. I do my research. I'm not the greatest videographer. I'm not always the greatest photographer, but I'm authentic and I put it together and I learn from every single thing I do. And I don't wait for everything to be perfect. I get it out there, and that's really helped me and inspired me to move forward with the comms. And I think it's a really great tip. So this is just my results. All my stuff's organic. And you can see that the monthly reach has increased from an average of 9,600 a month to 41,000 a month in terms of our reach. Million views we've had in the year that I've been running this, which is a huge increase. And we've grown our followers by 50%. And we're out there and we're sharing more where we weren't before, and performing well against our peers as well. So you've got a couple of live links in there to take you to the local offer Facebook page if you'd like to see it, and also to take you to the entry that I put into the comms files. And if you scroll down, you'll be able to download the report that you can see the front page of here to get into more detail about the kinds of content that I'm sharing. And if you want to contact me, please do email me. Really happy to chat to anyone. Thanks very much.
And now it's on to Best Small Team, and the winners we have are Alex and Matt from the Priory Group. So over to you, brackets, small team.
Okay, thanks for having us. I'm Matt Watts, and I'm with my colleague Alex Knight. We're from Priory, and we're very proud to have been named winners of Best Small Team at the UnAwards. It's a real honour for us to be here and share this work today among so many peers across the industry. So thanks very much for having us. As you can see, the title of our campaign and presentation is Addiction Epidemic, but just firstly, by way of background, as you can see there, Priory is the largest independent provider of mental health, addiction and working age adult social care services in the UK. We support just around 24,000 people a year across 270 sites. So, what that means really in terms of this is that we are able to see firsthand how addiction is changing across the UK from what we see within our services. So, onto the subject, addiction epidemic. To give a bit of background, addiction in the UK is changing and it is accelerating. So some of the data shows alcohol-related deaths are now at a record high, with over 10,000 deaths a year. Cocaine-related deaths have increased tenfold over the past decade, and gambling addiction has risen by around 130% in just a year. So what this tells us is that this isn't a marginal issue. It's a growing public health crisis affecting people from all walks of life. So in terms of how we decided to address that subject, we delivered a sustained year-long media relations campaign with a focus on raising awareness of the addiction epidemic, educating the public on signs and risks, positioning our clinicians as experts in the subject matter, and ultimately aiming to enable people to access support earlier. So, for us as a tagline, really at its core, this was about turning awareness into tangible action. So our key messages throughout the campaign centered on 3 very simple ideas. Addiction is a growing public health issue and it can affect anyone. Recovery is possible, but professional support is critical. And expert, compassionate care can make a real difference in sustained recovery. So we kept these messages consistent across everything that we did. I'm now going to hand over to Alex, who's going to talk through how we deliver this in practice and some of the results that it delivered. So off you go, Alex.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, and hi everyone. So Matt and I have worked together for about 2 years now, just over, as a small 2-person team. And we're blessed in a way, Priory, in that what people on the call may think of when you think of Priory are high-profile individuals, people like Kate Moss, Katie Price, who've been treated by Priory and talked about their addiction recovery or mental health rehabilitation, their treatment with us, and they've got a really high media profile and talk about it. And a lot of organisations, of course, would love to have a lot of high-profile figures talking about how an organisation has helped them, and it is really an asset to us in terms of our brand visibility. It does present a challenge for us as well, though, in terms of people's perceptions of us as being, in a way, inaccessible, only for the rich and famous and people with privilege to be able to access our services, which is not the reality. We support, as Matt said, we support a wide range of people across the whole of the UK, all different levels of addiction, acuity, and other services. And as Matt said, the addiction crisis is growing, and there's a real need for more and more people to understand that the services are out there for them and can be life-changing for them, and to understand how they can take action to address that. So we've really addressed our media strategy to deliver a campaign that works around that context, really. And as Matt said, it's a year-round campaign for us, always on, and we really utilise the timing of key moments in the public consciousness. Media focus on issues like Dry January at the start of the year, Go Sober for October later on in the year, or November, December, you've got a real public increase in alcohol consumption as you lead up to Christmas period. So there are various moments in the public zeitgeist where issues relating to addiction are really prominent, and we really work to capitalise on those moments with our media campaign. And then the rest of the year, we really we work hard to create our own content and our own stories to keep our campaign prominent right throughout the year as a real 12-month campaign. So that content revolves around patient stories. So you see a couple of people on screen there who've been through our services and really bravely told their addiction treatment and addiction recovery stories, and how that has been literally life-saving for them and their families. Expert commentary as well. We've got a wide range of consultants, psychiatrists and therapists within our addiction treatment program, with loads of insights into how addiction and substance misuse or behavioural addictions affect people, how they present, and what people can look out for. So tips, practical guidance coming from our experts, really valuable for media and really valuable for the public. And emerging trends as well. Our experts really do see things on the ground. So you've got an example there on the right hand side of the screen of a BBC News piece and BBC Parliament, from where an MP, Dr. Luke Evans MP, raised the issue of anabolic steroid addiction in Parliament this year, citing Priory evidence, which stemmed back from an addiction story we did some months previously about anabolic steroid addiction in young men. So that media flow right through to public consciousness, through to the highest levels of decision making in society, really having an impact. Making the issue of addiction and the services and the actions that people can take visible and relatable and understandable. That really has had a really high level of impact for us. 260 pieces of media coverage during this campaign period over the course of a year, which equates to about 20 pieces per month. So really high profile, and that reached about 1.8 billion total reach of the campaign, or opportunities to see. So really high impact. But those results are the real measure of success. In fact, before I come on to that, I just thought we also maximise all of that media output through our own channels as well. So there's earned media and then there's our own media. I think you take it for granted almost that we maximise that through social media and our website, making sure we're amplifying the voices of our experts within the campaign and with our patient stories to achieve maximum reach. But the reach of the campaign is one thing, but really the results are in the impact that has. So alcohol addiction is the primary most prominent addiction that we treat people for, up 6% year on year in terms of inquiries coming into us, people seeking addiction support, taking those actions that can be life-changing and life-saving for them. Cocaine addiction treatment requests from Priory up to year on year. Ketamine addiction requests up 500% over a 6-year period, and people seeking support for multiple addictions up 46% year on year. So these are really life-changing impacts that we're having for people through the awareness raising that we're doing in the campaign.
Thanks, Alex. And yeah, just to sort of take that on a bit further, what was really fascinating about this campaign for us as communications professionals is that this was really integrated with our operational and senior service leads, senior clinicians in the organisation, who we work with on our content. As we progressed and we see more awareness raising, more interest, more inquiries, we also have a real insight then into what public discussion is and what we're seeing. And this wasn't just about awareness, it drove real change in the way people receive care. We saw a significant number of people coming forward for support, and over this period of time, over the course of the past year, Priory undertook its biggest evolution in services for around 45 years. So traditionally, addiction treatment will be focused on the 28-day inpatient hospital stay, really around sort of medically supported detox. But there was a real desire and a need for a change in the way that treatment is delivered. So while that still exists and it is necessary for some people, there are many different options on the table, including really innovative residential treatment, therapy-led, that can range in time from 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks or longer, and community-based programs that offer flexible non-residential support, often in an outpatient environment. Digital treatment options for people that can take care into their own home. And then there's blended options so that people are able to come in to see clinicians or therapists in the clinic, into hospitals, or be treated as outpatients or in their own home, fits around their work, their lives, their families. So that broader sort of open model, flexible care is really giving people the choice and access that they need, really intertwined with the work that had gone on around communications. And obviously some of that then post the development of those services being to highlight that is available. So we really see the crossover and the impact. I think to close, addiction, to some extent will continue to be hidden, misunderstood and stigmatized. I think that our role as communicators is to bring it into the open, to show that recovery is possible, to humanize it, to share stories, to give people the confidence and the advice that they need to be able to progress with their lives. And I think this campaign, led by the two of us, has really helped to shift the conversation. We know that we've reached millions of people through it. And most importantly, as Alex has outlined, the evidence is showing that we're supporting more people to get the help they need. And also, many more people are receiving the information they need to be able to take the steps that they need to, wherever that might be, to be able to get their life on track. So I think, to summarise it, this campaign was really about turning awareness into action, and action then subsequently into treatment, which we've shown is achievable. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you both. That's an amazing amount of work for a team of two. We can see why the judges selected you and some amazing outcomes. So thank you so much for sharing. We'll come to questions with you both later, I'm sure.
National Crime Agency. So we are a law enforcement body across the UK that works to eliminate serious and organised crime across the globe. So as a result, we're not a police force, but we are the layer that lives slightly above them. So we're an international coordinating force around law enforcement. So as a result, we tend to work with the bigger scale crimes, and also we're looking at international activities as well. So henceforth, this campaign sits well neatly within that area. So next slide, please. So from there, what we did is fraud is actually 40% of all fraud in the UK reported is a fraud. It is the largest single form of crime that exists in the UK. And what we know with our work, with our intelligence and professionals here in law enforcement, is actually 75% of that fraud is actually delivered from outside of the UK in international jurisdictions. So the 4 largest jurisdictions of crime, of fraud, are India, China, Nigeria, and Ghana. So despite smaller countries, you could say, by population, there's a concentration of activity around fraud in certain markets. And from our point, we always want to work upstream and be able to try and intercept those fraud attempts before they reach the UK and we start to have to deal with victims of that fraudulent activity. So everything you can think of, from ladies believing that they're helping Brad Pitt get out of a sticky situation, to people being convinced that they're invested in an exceptionally sophisticated Bitcoin investment, which turns out obviously to be a complete fraud, right up to people being forced and encouraged to move their saving balances from one bank account to another because apparently there's fraudsters in their account and they're being called by their fraud prevention team to tell them to move their money. Many different MOs of fraud, but ultimately these are often taking place from one single site in an overseas boiler room operation. So our campaign was very much trying to see what we could do to change the language and change the narrative in Ghana, which is one of these jurisdictions of high risk. So we identified a way of having a campaign that looked to encourage the general public, which in Ghana is a very, what you might call a righteous nation. They believe and they're very strongly in their commitment to doing the right thing. They've got a rich traditional cultural heritage that is based on doing the right thing by your family and your community and your nation. So we took that Ghana heritage message and converted this into what we call the Ghana fraud reporting campaign, which was actually a phone line as well as an online portal. And we had very modest targets. This was done in March of last year. Very modest targets of just 100 calls because we understand that there's trepidation about making such a call. But we were wanting to make sure we got the message clear and injected a different language in the nation around what fraud meant or to be a fraudster. Next slide, please. So with that messaging, we worked with a local creative agency in Ghana and knew we had to use local language, which is Pidgin, which is a kind of mixture of English and Ga and Sui. So you can kind of, sometimes you kind of understand what people are saying, but actually it's a loose sort of mixture of different local languages. The word Sakawa actually means a fraud or a trick. And that's the local name used for fraud in Ghana. So we took these 2 elements and we came up with a graphic device that worked around romance fraud, which is the key. Romance fraud is the main fraud MO that's been delivered currently now in Ghana. So we had to use the motif of the heart, mix that in with something that was very striking, and also a calling device. So we ended up with the Report Sakawa lockup. Again, I was in the UK. We used local creative agencies and media agencies in Ghana. Everything done on Teams and phone calls and emails. That's it. That's how we interacted. And next slide, please. And so with that, we also identified a key headline, again in local Pidgin, which is Your Mind for Dare, which is actually a kind of colloquial proverb that's often said, or a phrase, which basically means use your head right, do the right thing, you know right from wrong. And that is the message behind Your Mind for Dare. So we use that as the heading. We also use the black star, which is again, concurrent with national pride in Ghana. And we wanted to make sure the colours also represented that of the flag. So we were making sure that we really drilled home these symbols of doing the right thing by your country. Next slide, please. So as the campaign rolls through, we had our poster lockup, which again included all these key elements that we wanted to make sure were communicated in a straightforward, simple way. We had that main, as I said, the main campaign headline, followed by the romance fraud anchor, which needed to be there. And then as we showed, that lockup of Report Sakawa, the phone number, and you'll see there's an organisation called IOCO, which is at the bottom, which is the Economic Organised Crime Office of Ghana. We made sure that even though we were the NCA and we were behind the campaign, we have no brand awareness in Ghana. It's no point us having our branding on there. We wanted to make sure that it was the local partner was seen as the key driver for this. So we worked hand in glove with them. And so it's only their branding that you saw on all of our assets and all of our materials, which made it essentially make sense and resonate. It would have made no logic for us as a British organisation to be saying this to local people. So that was important to us. And next slide. So in terms of the media selection, we knew we wanted to use out of home. So posters were really prominent and made a big part of this activity. So we had 40 main posters. We also did social media with our good friends over at Meta, with Facebook and Insta, as well as Google searches as well. And also we had a very extensive press campaign. So this was on the 5th of March. We had our press conference, which related directly to our team. So as mentioned, we only expected to get about 100 calls on the call line. But as of today, as of recently, we've had 6,667 calls. At the end of the campaign, at the end of March, we actually had 6,058 calls, I believe. So it was a phenomenon. It was so much more than we ever expected. Thank you all. It was talked about on TV. It was talked about in soap operas. We had people commenting about it on all radio shows and such. And because of that campaign, I'll just go to the next slide for me, please. And because of that activity, this is just some examples of sort of the press coverage and TV coverage. The gentleman on the left in the red tie, and that is Dominic Cummings, who is our NCA, what we call an international liaison officer. So he's our NCA personnel in country, in market. And he was running all the way around for me to make this happen. So he's brilliant. And the lady next to him is Augustina. She's with the Economic Organised Crime Office. And then Margaret Leone and Chevy, they were all, again, our team of promoting the campaign. So it was all very much a team effort to get this happen. And we're really proud and pleased with the activity as it was delivered. To the point, actually, on the second day of the phone line opened, we had a phone call from a fraudster saying, "Can you take those posters down? You're ruining my business," which was ironic. But then the most important part of it, if we just do to the final slide, someone saying that they were suspicious about some activity taking place in a house near this neighbourhood. When we conducted a raid on this home property, we found 189 people who were living against their will in this property. They were actually Nigerian nationals who've been trafficked into Ghana to be forced to work in a call centre to UK victims, doing a romance fraud scam. They were unable to go home. They had their passports taken from them, and they were told they had to work there for at least 2 years before they were allowed to have their papers back. So we were able to liberate them essentially, and they were allowed to go home, transported to there by us. But we also were able to make a massive hoard of laptops and mobile phones, as well as the 27 men arrested who are currently now being charged, and they're awaiting trial. So this was an example of where comms can literally save lives. It can literally move the needle, get people to be able to be out of a situation that they beforehand could not have thought of a way out of. And also it meant that we, from a comms team point of view, has a proof positive of the power of what comms can do in law enforcement, and also what we can do in international conditions with a small budget. So I'll hand back to the team.
Fantastic work, Sibi. Thank you for sharing that. Fascinating there. I think that must be the greatest testimony of all time, wasn't it? Can you take those posters down, please? It's affecting my business. I love that. That's fantastic. Thanks ever so much. So next up, we have the winner of Best Creative Comms, which was another really, really popular category. We have Charlotte Parker from Bedfordshire Police.
Hi everyone, I'm Charlotte, Communications Manager within Bedfordshire Police. As Darren says, we were the winners of Best Creative Comms this year for our campaign Lost Boys, which is a campaign focused on educating parents and young people alike on the signs of child criminal exploitation and the dangers of becoming involved in county lines. I'm very conscious of my 7-minute time limit, so I will try and rush through this as quickly as I can. I'm not expecting you to read all the text on the slides. I know they're going to be shared afterwards. So ultimately, our aim was to reduce the number of young people in particular being groomed by gangs. And we really wanted to do something that will impact the county lines activity and drug crime in Bedfordshire longer term. This is a really long-term piece of work for us. It wasn't just about those initial results, although we have already seen some immediate positive short-term results. So it was a real multifaceted approach. We were very much targeting primarily children and young people, in particular boys, which I'll come on to more in a minute. But we also wanted to make sure we were raising awareness amongst parents at the same time and communities in general around the signs to look out for that county lines might be operating in their areas. And then we also knew that there was still work to do, both in terms of partners, but also within our own workforce on getting them to understand what the issue of child criminal exploitation is and how they can help with that. So in terms of what we did, so just some context for this, we got some money from the Home Office. We don't usually get money in Bedfordshire. Usually we have to kind of beg, borrow and steal to even get a poster. So to be given a significant amount of money in comms to spend on what we wanted to was quite obviously brilliant, but also a big task to actually think about how are we going to do this, what are we going to use it on. So just some of the tactics that we did. The main kind of feature piece of the campaign was a bespoke 30-minute virtual reality film. I've got a whole slide on that, but that was going to be delivered alongside a full lesson plan and education package to schools across the county. But then to supplement that, we did a lot of your more typical campaign activity. So we used out-of-home advertising for the first time in a long time, looking at billboards in areas that we knew were county lines hotspots, looking at using bus advertising in particular so that we were getting that captive audience of people that may be using different transport lines for county lines activity. We've done tons of social media advertising, and that's something that we've continued since the initial launch, all using this branding. So targeting different groups depending on who they were. So for parents, we did a lot of Facebook advertising. Young people, we did a lot of Snapchat and YouTube. We also did some really specific YouTube advertising for young people. So we worked with our Intel team who gave us some of the details of YouTube channels that we knew were being viewed by some of our gang members living in Bedfordshire. And what we did was then targeted young boys living in Bedfordshire watching that content and made our adverts unskippable. So the idea was if they were just on the fringes of gang-related activity, hopefully they're seeing our adverts and making a change before they get too involved. We've put on a number of in-person events for parents. I think we're at 4 now. We're really fortunate that we have got 24 Hours in Police Custody, which is filmed in Bedfordshire. They did an episode on 24 Hours in Police Custody all around child criminal exploitation and county lines. It was called Lost Boys, and we actually decided to steal their name of the episode for our campaign because we loved it so much. So we massively made sure we were maximising that coverage. And then we did all the normal local media, stakeholder engagement and internal comms because our internal audience was a key one for us with this as well. So about the film itself, which, as I say, was the main part of this campaign and what really kind of sets it apart from anything that we've done in the past. So we created a 30-minute virtual reality film. I say we used a company to create it for us. Why did we use virtual reality? So our target audience was young boys in particular, and we chose young boys because, again, we worked with our Intel department to come up with a victim profile. So who are the people in our county that are typically the victims of county lines. And by victims, we mean those who are just on the fringes, those who are being exploited and groomed into carrying out drug deals, but who aren't yet fully kind of entrenched into gang activity. And we knew from that more than 95% were boys of a certain age. So we wanted to look at how can we reach them in a creative way. We know that obviously a lot of boys these days are big into gaming. Many or even have virtual reality headsets in their own home. So we knew that it was a technology that probably young people would relate to, certainly a lot more than just sitting listening to a PowerPoint. It's also fully immersive. So obviously while you're wearing a virtual reality headset, you can't be talking to your friends, you can't be messing about, you can't be checking your phone. You are fully locked into what's in on the screen. And anyone who's seen anything in virtual reality will also know it's a lot more impactful. So our film was done in both first and third person. So those first person bits are really impactful because it actually feels like it is happening to you and that you are in that story, and it leaves a lot of more of a lasting impression as well. So as I said, we really worked on a victim profile when it came to looking at who our cast were. So we were making sure that they were a mix of ethnicities, depending on what our profile told us. We also knew that if you are a victim of county lines activity and you are white, you are most likely to be living in central Bedfordshire in our county rather than in Bedford or Luton, where people would typically assume. So we made sure that our locations were reflective of that as well. And it was really trying to make sure that it was as accurate as possible to real life, but also relatable to young people as well. We've created a full lesson plan to go alongside it to talk through different decisions made at each stage. We wanted to make sure that we were showing young people that this does happen in real life as well. It's not just fictional. So we've used some lived experience. So this is Ben. He has been in jail twice for various drug gang-related activity, but has now kind of turned over a new leaf and is working with us to help prevent other young people from going down that path. Ben has been to a lot of events with us, and he is so impactful when he talks. You can really see young people relating to him so much more than our police officers. They really do kind of just want to talk to him. So very conscious of time, but just to whiz through some of our highlights. So that number's higher now, but we've had thousands of young people who have so far viewed this film. One of the big indicators of success for us early on for us was the increase in intelligence submissions. So we had more intel submissions in relation to child criminal exploitation in the month after the campaign launch than we have ever had. So we beat a new record for that. In March just gone, we did another real focus on social media activity around this to tie in with County Lines Week and Child Exploitation Awareness Day. And again, we beat that record again. So every time we push this campaign, we're really seeing a notable difference in terms of our intel submissions that we're getting. The YouTube content, in particular, the lived experience videos that we have with Ben, they're the most successful content we have on YouTube in terms of our watch rate. Most of the people are watching more than 90% of the videos, which is really positive. We've had more than 300 parents attend our in-person Not My Child events, with several referrals made from parents directly for support. And we've had, as well as that, huge traffic to our website, and we've won 2 awards. So just super quickly, our top lessons on this. So one, take the time to be creative. The first thing we did was put the laptops down, went to a forest with some pens and flip chart paper and got brainstorming on how we were going to spend this money, what we were going to do that was going to be different, came up with as many different ideas as we could. Big fan of having a plan. So really take the time to think about what we're going to achieve, how we're going to achieve it, how we're going to measure that success. Think big. So I know we were really fortunate to have the money, and that especially in this day and age in the public sector, people aren't going to have anywhere near the money that we have. We really maximise this. So this project did cost us more than £100,000 in the end, but we've invested in something that's really going to have that long-term impact. So obviously our virtual reality headsets can be used for other virtual reality content, and the film will be kept rolling out to schools for many years to come, really, as obviously new students come through. Audience was key, obviously doing that work to establish who our victim profile was and where to find them. No blanket approach, using different channels depending on where we knew who we were trying to reach, and just that multifaceted approach. So our whole idea was, while young people were getting the film shown to them in the school, we were targeting the parents with social media advertising, and then hopefully engineering a conversation between the two of them at the end of the school day. And I've got one last quick slide, really just in terms of future, but the key bit to mention from here is that we are licensing this out to other people. So I know a lot of organisations, or some organisations, have virtual reality headsets. If anyone does have headsets and is interested in having the film, we're offering out the film, the lesson plan and all the assets to people for £500. So if you do want to know anything more about it or interested in rolling it out, then give us a shout. That's me done.
That's amazing work, Charlotte. Well done. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love that that all began with pens and paper in a forest. That's a lesson to all of us, isn't it? Next up, we've got best use of data. And for this one, we've got Sian from Surrey County Council.
Hello, everyone. If you could give me a thumbs up if you can see the slides.
Yes, thank you.
Great. Okay, cool. So as Darren said, we won best use of data category. But having listened to my peers already, I can see that everybody's using data. We're all using it every day to put together the campaigns that are being effective. So I feel a bit of a fraud for coming in and talking about data when you've already heard so much. But just to give you a little bit of a background about what we won this award for, it's for the Multiply campaign, which was it was a campaign that was a 3-year government funded programme, and it was all aimed at adults aged over the age of 18 who don't have a maths GCSE, and the idea was to improve numeracy levels across the UK for all the great benefits that would come from that. In Surrey, the campaign had already run for 2 years, and unfortunately in both of those years it had fallen very short of the target number of enrolments that was required. So we had one final year to turn it around. It was a bit of rejigging went on here within the council. It was moved to a different team so that we could really give it a bit of a fresh start with some fresh eyes. So starting point, has been the case with so many of my peers so far, was a really big data deep dive. So we looked at all the existing data that we could find related to Multiply. We really wanted to just build up a really big 360 view of what the challenge was, what the background was to that, and then work through that to find potential solutions for year 3. So as with many of you in the public sector, I think that we're really lucky to have a lot of data available. I've worked in the private sector before, and you have to end up going out and paying for all your data. But in the public sector, if there's anything we've got, it's data. So that's great. And some of the data sources that we dug into were, we looked at channels. So we looked at things like social media reach and engagement in the previous years. We looked at newsletter opens and clicks, website visits, conversion rates, and particularly what was really important for the success of this campaign was that we looked at audience data. So we dug really deeply into the intel we already had as a council about our residents across the board. But then really luckily for us, in year 2 of Multiply, the team who were looking after it that year had recognised the shortfall and taken some steps to improve it. So they'd commissioned specific research to take a really good look at the audience and really try to understand their behaviours and attitudes. And because that piece of work had been commissioned, it was available to us going into year 3. And that research really uncovered some really key elements that helped us to make year 3 become successful. We also had data like provider returns from previous years. So we had a number of further education colleges and training providers and community organisations who were delivering Multiply to the community. So we looked at all their returns from previous years, and then we spent quite a lot of time talking to various internal stakeholders at the council, varying different levels of seniority, because we just wanted to understand what their thoughts were and how they'd approached it in the past. And then we also looked for external best practice examples across other regions, because it was a UK-wide programme, so there's quite a lot of learning that we could take from other regions who had been successful, as well as other regions who had perhaps not been successful, and see where it had fallen down for them as well as where it had fallen down for us. So what came out of all of this data deep dive was we kept coming up with these 6 recurring and very much interrelated themes, and these 6 themes had sort of combined in the previous 2 years to bring about the lack of success for the campaign. So I know that I think the slides are going to be shared after this, so I'm not going to go into massive amount of detail, and we're running up against time as well. But basically these 6 themes, we took them forward so that we could then create some theories around them. So for each of the 6 themes, we came up with a theory behind it, what caused that theme to come about, and then from that theory we came up with what could be a potential solution to fix that theme, that issue. And this is the important bit, is what we actually changed to make the 3rd year successful. So the things that we changed, first of all, we simplified the customer journey. So it had been not convoluted, but a bit of a longer customer journey in previous years. We made it as simple as we possibly could for people to register. The data really showed us that we'd had lots of drop-offs at various points across the customer journey, and so we made it as simple as possible for people to register, and we captured their details in a number of ways. One of the ways was on an online form, and once we'd captured their details, we actually kept in touch with them throughout the rest of the registration process, as we recommended which provider they should go to for the course that they should do, which one was most suitable for them. The project team, not the comms team on this, but the project team who were doing that contact, kept really close to the people who'd registered their interest and really supported them through the enrolment process, because the data had showed us that our audience was a little bit unsure, they weren't very confident, they weren't very keen on doing anything to do with maths, and so we needed to just give them a really high level of support to get them across the line and signed up for courses, and then once they're on the course, the provider could give them the support and make sure that they were successful in that course. Another thing that we did was we knew that we needed to really increase the scale, because our enrolment numbers were very low and we had to really smash it in the 3rd year. So we focused really hard on stakeholder engagement with the larger providers, so some of the further education colleges, but also some of the private individual training providers who had more scale available. And the reason this was important was because these organisations already had a trusted relationship with the potential learners. So we, as the council, did not have this relationship with the learners. It was the training providers who had this relationship, and because they already had them on board doing other courses, for example, English as a second language courses, access to IT courses, all these sorts of things. So they already had them on board, they just needed to get them engaged with Multiply. And because they're already in a trusted relationship, the learners were much more likely to sign up as a result of the trust that they had with the provider who was already providing training in other things. So the project team spent a lot of time working on the relationship with the providers to really keep them close. We had we did 2 provider events during the course of the programme to bring them into the council. We met with them, we talked with them about what the challenges were, we introduced them all to each other, so that actually some of the providers ended up forming their own relationships and working together on certain new courses that they put together for Multiply learners in the future. Importantly, we pivoted the creative approach away from what we'd previously done, which was to follow very strictly the government guidelines. The data made it really clear that the previous creative just hadn't cut through. It hadn't really hit the right note with the learners it was aimed at. So we made it much more relatable and accessible. We tried to make it eye-catching and just tried to make it something that you might not expect from a council, and make it just a bit more dare I say, even fun, and just not something that you might have expected to be sent out by the council. And tied in with the creative, of course, was the messaging. Again, the data showed us that the messaging needed to achieve cut through and just make it much more about life skills and social stuff, and not anything to do with formal learning or classrooms, and definitely never mention the word maths. So we used relatable everyday situations like working out how to split the bill when you're out in a cafe with a friend, or how to adapt a recipe so that you've got a recipe for 4 and you need it to feed 6. How do you actually do that? We wanted to bring in sort of real life scenarios that people would recognise in themselves, rather than trying to get them to go and study some maths, because that's not appealing to anybody. And then again, tied in with the messaging and the creative was segmentation. So the data gave us some really clear insights into who our audience segments were and how they were different to each other. So we needed to tailor the messaging and the creative for each specific audience so that it would cut through and just relate to them. A single creative approach obviously wouldn't have appealed across all of our different audiences. We had 3 primary audiences and 2 secondary audiences, and they were all quite different. And then finally, and importantly in terms of why we're here today, we took a new approach to data collection. So previously, when the teams have been working on Multiply previously, they collected data at the end of each campaign year. So the providers had sent in their returns and showed how many enrolments they'd had and how many people had gone on each course and all that sort of thing. So that then the team could carry out a review and work out the plan for the next year. But we changed that. We started to track the campaign performance weekly. So we'd literally get information from all of the different sources on weekly performance, and then we reported performance to senior level within the council on a monthly basis. So we pulled together all those weekly reports, turned them into monthly reports and sent them up the line within the council. And then we also had a programme board that was running quarterly, and again we reported there. So because we were tracking everything weekly and in some cases even daily, it meant that we could really quickly see if something wasn't working and take action to solve it. So we were tracking the social media, say daily, sometimes and weekly. So we could pivot and adapt and even switch channels to prioritise specific audience segments if we needed to. So at one point we could see that we weren't really quite cutting through with the young people audience. So we switched to Spotify ads and gave them a try to see if that would get us in front of the right audience. And when we could see that something was working, we could double down on it. So if it wasn't working, we switched it up. If it was working, we did more of it. And then what you'll all be wanting to know is, did we hit our target in the final year? Yes, we did. We had a target of 1,800 enrolments, which we needed to hit, and our final figure was 4,257. So we completely smashed it. And a lot of those enrolments were actually, thank you, a lot of those enrolments were actually progression. So some of our learners came in to do one course with us, with one of the providers, and because they were in a trusted environment and they found that actually it went okay, it wasn't awful maths and it wasn't all about sitting in a classroom, they then moved on to do another course, or they might have been referred through to a different provider to do a different Multiply course. You know, the courses that were run were really wide ranging. Some of them were like literally outdoors in an allotment, and working out how long a piece of wood needed to be to create a border and that sort of thing. That all came under Multiply. Some of them were cookery courses. Some of them were sitting in a classroom and using Excel and working through that. But there was a really wide range. So there was lots of different courses that they could do, and they could progress. And some of the students really did progress really well, and that was great, and that helped us to get to that figure of 4,257. So key takeaways on this: one of the most important things, and I've heard this echoed from my peers earlier, and I'm sure there'll be more of this following me as well, is that you just must keep using the data and the insights at every stage of the campaign. So you start off with the data. Obviously, I think we all do that, but then it's really important to keep on top of it as you go through the campaign, because things can change. So it might start off something might start off well and then lose traction as it goes, and you've got to keep tracking the data to see that that's happening and take action to solve it when you see it happening. As I said at the beginning, there's a lot of data out there. It's all around us. We just need to do our best to find it and then actually use it. Another really important thing was to stay curious. So say if there's a spike or a dip in responses, we always wanted to uncover what had caused that, because if it was a spike, we could do it again, and if it was a dip, we could avoid doing it in the future. So always staying curious about what's going on and what's causing the spikes, the dips, the reactions. And then finally, and we definitely found this in this campaign, not everything will work. We carried out a short influencer campaign, for example, because we thought that would really cut through to the young mums, and it tanked. But it was okay because we were following the data, we could see what was happening, so we knew that we shouldn't repeat that. So yeah, not everything will work out, and that's okay. But if you follow the data and if you keep trying, then eventually it'll work and you'll figure it out.
Our penultimate winners presentation is for best collaboration, and we have Shafali and Will from the London Borough of Havering. Over to you, team.
Not sure how we follow everyone else's incredible campaigns, but here we go. There's quite a lot of information in these slides. We won't be covering everything because obviously time constraints, but the slides will be available to everyone afterwards anyway. So Where We Live was our kind of a flagship campaign for Havering Council's external comms team. It was designed to empower residents and communities to take pride in their neighbourhood and play an active role in making the borough cleaner, greener and safer. So it was really born out of a survey that we conducted among residents, asking them kind of their perception on the council, on Havering and the place around them, and the overwhelmingly kind of worrying response was that people didn't feel pride in Havering. A lot of the things that led to that were litter, mess, and especially fears around crime and antisocial behaviour, especially in the more metropolitan areas. So the first thing we had to do was kind of approach how can we restore that kind of pride. And obviously, as Darren mentioned earlier on, Havering, like most councils across the country, are really struggling financially. So we knew from the beginning that if this was going to work, we needed buy-in from lots of people, both external partners, various teams within the council, and members of the public. So a really important thing for us was to kind of get that buy-in from people at an early stage. So it needed, as we said there, it really needed a holistic response. So to run a zero budget campaign, the first thing we had to do was bring in everyone, essentially. That included members of our enforcement teams, our engagement teams, our environment teams, external partners such as local volunteer groups, and of course members of the public and partner organisations and businesses. We started with like a brainstorming session. We looked at those key points: the lack of pride, the kind of the mess, and the need for kind of tidying up the area, and of course crime and antisocial behaviour. Do you want to go to the next slide? So we figured the best way to do this was to go big to begin with. We needed to catch people's attention early. So we arranged kind of like a launch PR stunt. We had the leader of the council and the lead member head down to Frog Island, which is where all of our waste is processed. And we had them line up next to one day, a single day's worth of fly tipped and litter collected waste. And you can see that in those pictures there. That equated to 6 to 8 tons, and that's what our team pick up daily. That was something that really got people's attention. There were a hell of a lot of comments, a lot of attention that we received, on the various YouTube video that we put out and the press release and the images we released, and that really kind of kick-started people's attention in, okay, wow, this is a real issue here. Fly tipping particularly is a real issue, and then that kind of gave us that kind of springboard to start really promoting this campaign, which was Where We Live. Do you want to go to the next slide? Yeah, so our delivery of this, we wanted to create this brand awareness, so we created the simple hashtag Where We Live. The idea being that anyone, whether it was someone, part of a volunteer group, we have a lot of wombles or litter picking groups in the area, or even just someone that was cleaning up the space immediately outside their home, could all post onto social media using the hashtag Where We Live, and then we would share that and really amplify that voice and show that people aren't alone in wanting to take pride in their area. one of the biggest elements of our campaign was grot spots. And so you can see in the picture here, the idea behind a grot spot was every borough has them, those kind of unused little pockets of land that no one really quite knows who owns them or who's supposed to be responsible for them, and they just gather litter and dirt and mess. And obviously they are hotspots for fly tipping. So we approached a local organisation, Elm Site Services, who are happy to sponsor a cleanup for this particular area, and we worked with the local volunteer group, which is Havering Volunteer Centre. And as you can see in the before and after, they spent a few days clearing everything out, relaying the area entirely, and turning it from a disused grot spot and a kind of home for antisocial behaviour into a public garden. We kind of had to push this grot spot idea across the full campaign, kind of what was the term that was used? Guerrilla gardening, kind of introducing the idea of guerrilla gardening and people going out there and kind of taking a little pocket of land and adopting it for their own. We've also had team ups with FCC, which is our waste contractor, and Marlborough Highways, which is our roads contractor, and we were able to use their social value contributions again, which is something that Darren mentioned in the Havering presentation earlier. We're able to use their social value contributions to kind of put towards a lot of these campaigns and a lot of this work. So it really created like a kind of collaborative approach across the board. Next slide. Yeah. So in addition to this, the other, obviously, as I said at the beginning, the other thing that people were really focused on was antisocial behaviour and crime. So we hosted 2 crime summits. This brought together members of the public, our enforcement teams, public enforcement bodies like Havering Police and the Metropolitan Police, and faith and cultural leaders. And the idea was to bring these people in and discuss their perceptions of these issues and what could be done about it. One of the biggest takeaways from this was we installed a knife surrender bin in one of our boroughs because knife crime was a common theme that came up. And Shafali is going to talk to you a little bit about results from this, which include the knife surrender bin.
So to measure the impact of such a big campaign and with so many different angles, we kind of had to be strategic right from the beginning. So we set out clear KPIs to measure qualitative and quantitative outcomes separately. So on the quantitative side of things, we monitored something that's more measurable, like service data, looked at the number of reports submitted each month and the number of litter pickers that were prosecuted. We also worked with volunteers to monitor new groups that were being formed and collected information of how many people were attending and participating in these events that they were hosting every other weekend. On the qualitative side, we looked at real changes that were happening on the ground. So things like streets actually being cleared of litter. We captured a lot of before-after pictures of streets and graffiti, took a lot of videos of the river cleanup at Painsbrook. We literally found a broken bench along with a lot of other rubbish that definitely didn't belong there, and just videos of that were quite capturing. And there was also a video of the removal of chewing gum from town centre high streets. We saw on knives, we saw over 200 knives that were surrendered and taken off the streets within the first 6 months of the bin being installed. So those were more of the tangible things, but measuring things like pride, behavior change and perception was a bit trickier. So we did this by speaking to volunteers at these events and tried to understand the general sentiment that was going around. And we also gathered feedback directly from them in these volunteer steering group meetings that were held every month. And I think what made this campaign special is we not only achieved all of this in like 1 year's time, but also created a legacy. So our volunteer or Womble groups continue to operate independently. We still have this volunteer steering group meeting every month, and there's this shared sense of responsibility for keeping where we live clean. And we've definitely seen the shift in behavior as well. So previously groups in the borough often worked independently, but now they actively reach out and want to work together with the council, and that really showed us the lasting impact of this campaign, and it really helped build that collective pride and action. So if you have any questions, our emails are on there, so we'll share the slides as well. The last slide is of our amazing volunteers without whom this campaign was impossible. And we also have a campaign video which we launched when the campaign completed like 1 year, but it's 2 minutes long, so I will not waste time playing it. But if you're interested, please look at it at your own time. You can find it very easily on YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shefali. Well, that's brilliant, and it's great to hear that the Wombles are still alive and well as well. So fantastic.
And growing.
Growing. I remember them first time around. I'm that old. Thank you both. That's brilliant work. So we have our final slot now. We've got for best use of research and evaluation, we've got Alex from the National Crime Agency. So thanks for waiting, Alex. Over to you.
Thanks for having me, and I'm going to talk to you about financially motivated sexual extortion, in short FMSE or sextortion campaign that we ran in March, April last year. It was really lovely to hear the range of stuff, and for today I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what we did for this campaign, but also some of the results that we got, and a couple of takeaways at the end. First off, FMSE, also known as extortion, is a form of online blackmail where criminals threaten to share nudes of victims unless they pay them money. It could be real photo, video taken by the victim, or it could be AI-generated material created by the offender. And there are a couple of stats here showing you the scale of this. So in 2024, police forces received an average of 117 reports of FMSE from under 18-year-olds each month. And a large proportion of those victims were males aged 15 to 17. Also, the Internet Watch Foundation reported that in the first 6 months of 24, there was about 20% increase in the number of UK reports of child sexual abuse imagery involving FMSE. So you can see quite a growing threat. This has particularly high harm to victims, and it includes in cases suicide following threats to release those compromising images. And after several tragic cases made national headlines, you can see a couple of articles from The Guardian and the BBC, the need for intervention became urgent. So what we did, we were tasked to develop a campaign that educates young boys about risks while demonstrating measurable impact. And our communications objectives include increasing awareness of those warning signs by 5%, increasing visits to the campaign landing page by 50%, and a 1% reduction in boys who share nude images with strangers. So this had a very limited budget, so we had to establish a really robust evaluation framework and demonstrate return on investment. In terms of what we did, so we knew that the victim demographic for FMSE was slightly different to the child sexual abuse victim demographic, where it's primarily girls, and young males' experiences of CSA and nude sharing is under research. So our first thing was to use quantitative and qualitative research to understand young males' attitudes and perceptions of risk, nude sharing, reporting attempts, establish baseline metrics using those things, and refine our messaging. And you see 3 of the stats from our research. So we knew that teenage boys aged 15 to 17 were particularly vulnerable, with 74% of them not understanding FMSE, 73% unaware of reporting tools, and 26% of them unable to identify warning signs. And to know that the campaign wouldn't have been as successful had we not done all this pre-analysis work. Get onto the some of the assets you can see, and just the flag that we've also used behavioral science, and in particular the COMBI framework, which you're probably very familiar with, to identify those barriers to risk appraisal and appropriate intervention types. Won't go into that in more detail, but we delivered a targeted campaign between March and April, as I'd mentioned, and it was aimed at educating 15 to 17-year-olds about the risks and potential harm in sharing nude images of themselves online, but also persuading them to ignore requests. Very briefly, play you animation. And that was just one of the many things, assets that we've developed. And just a flag that we have used a combination of paid media, so that played on Instagram, Snapchat and Reddit, but also use our own channels, social media channels, as well as earned media, press release, engagement with regional, national media, and finally, most importantly, stakeholder engagement. So we've reached out to police forces across the UK, charities and not-for-profit organisations as well for amplification. Moving on to our results. So this gives you a bit of an overview, but we analyze website social media analytics and also run polling again with young boys. And we found that the proportion of boys able to spot potential warning signs increased from 74% to 83% following the campaign. We've also seen a 185% increase in the visits to the landing page. That's the CEOP education page that we're sending people to. And the number of boys who said they would share nudes of themselves with strangers online has also significantly decreased, with only 2% saying they would, versus a 6% in pre-wave. And then finally, while it's impossible to definitely prove a specific number of lives saved, given the scale of the behaviour change observed. So we had over 48,000 fewer boys potentially engaging in high-risk nude image sharing, and the documented link between FMSE victimisation and suicide risk, it's reasonable to conclude that the campaign has potentially saved at least one life, and so likely has saved 1.46 million pounds to the UK economy. This is all based on a calculation done by the Samaritans. You can see also some of the outtakes in there in terms of the number of video views and boys reached, and some of our social media impressions. I won't go into the detail due to time. A couple of takeaways. Firstly, investing in research and evaluation pays off. As you can see, we've done rigorous evaluation framework, including ROI calculation. And then secondly, behavioural science and message testing were key to successful creative execution. I'd mentioned already that we've used the COMBI framework, and that guided us in the pre-polling questions, which looked at a couple of barriers to behaviours like sharing nudes and reporting, which we could then address in the campaign and avoid unintended consequences such as victim blaming or shaming. We've had really positive feedback from the post-campaign polling, where the young boy said the ad felt supportive and reassuring while simultaneously building awareness of the issue. And then I'll leave you with the image of Jordan Stevens, a celebrity influencer with whom we've partnered as phase 2. So what I've talked to you about was last year's campaign. We have now already run a phase 2 in April, and we're ongoing evaluation. So yeah, watch this space. But thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Alex. That was a really important campaign, wasn't it? And fantastic results. And yeah, underlines the importance of research, doesn't it? So thank you very much for sharing that. Danielle, have you spotted questions in the chat? I'm just quickly going through it now.
We have one from Melissa. I have a question for Sean. How did you know the influencer involvement just wasn't working? And also, just wasn't working. That's for you, Sean. And then I've got one for Sibi.
Yeah, so we were tracking visits to the website and registration sign-ups, and so we thought that the influencer thing was working really well because we got loads of amazing, it was on Instagram, got loads of really good engagement, and people were coming into the comments and going, oh yeah, I did a multiplier course last year and it was brilliant, you know, and people were going, oh great, and so amazing that Surrey County Council is doing this. And you know, the engagement and the sentiment was fantastic, and I was like, great, go and look at the website. And it didn't drive anything at all. There was absolutely no effect, which was really a bit disappointing, but you know, better to know than think that the level of engagement, if I hadn't been tracking on the website really closely and tracking the registrations and also direct with providers as well, if I hadn't been tracking all of that, I would have looked at the engagement and thought, yeah, that's really good, it's really working. And it wasn't the case. It got lots of great sentiment for the council, so you know, it had a benefit, but it didn't specifically benefit that campaign.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. And for Sibi, are you able to share what the budget was for your campaign?
Yes, hi, yeah, it was £35,000
Brilliant, thank you.
for a month's activity. So it basically split 10k creative, 25k media.
That's great. Thanks, Sibi. One of our sponsors of the UnAwards, Alex Waddington from Whetstone Communications, is on the call. Hi to Alex. I think Alex has got something he wanted to share very quickly with the group. Alex, do you want to go for it?
Thanks, Darren. Yeah, this will be very quick. So Alex Waddington from Whetstone Communications here. We've supported the best use of data category for the last 3 years. So since me and Darren came up with the idea for it, and I think as Sian said, and Sian, great presentation today, obviously is the winner of best use of data, but I think all the examples have shown how the standard is being raised in terms of use of data. So I'm really excited today to launch our typology of successful organic content. So this is essentially a distillation down of all. We do a lot of work on very deep dive social media auditing. So we go beyond just surface level. We use analytics, but we also use textual data as well. And this has been sort of in progress for 2 or 3 years. And what I'm really excited to have done is distilled down as a resource, which is going to be freely available, a sort of almost like a guide to how to get the best from organic social. So important to say that organic social, many of you sort of have to work with that. For campaigns, paid social definitely, for obviously has been illustrated today, a role there for that, for targeting. But if you need to get the best from successful organic content, I think this hopefully has got real value for you. In the interest of time, and we're not going to go through it all now, if you'd like a copy of that, if you'd like me to send you a copy, if you scan that QR code, just zap that, it'll get you through to a form, and you can just fill in a few details and I will send it to you. And if you want to have a conversation about other ways we can help you with using data for things like deep dive social media audits and other applications, yeah, just give me a shout. I'll hand back to you, Darren.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Alex. That's very helpful. We've got a couple of questions come in. We've got one from Caroline Clancy. Hi, Caroline. Question for Alex at the NCA. How did you carry out the pre and post campaign research? Did you pay an agency to do that?
We did, yes. We worked with a research agency for both pre and post, and we also did message testing. We did manage to use a lived experience group as well from the Marie Collins Foundation as part of our message testing, which was fantastic as well.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Alex. And we'll probably call this the final question, given that we're a little bit over. We've got Luke Fox here. Hi, Luke. Great impact by the Priory team in terms of increasing requests to access support from those who need it. I'm interested in whether the media coverage obtained had any negative consequences and how that was identified and managed, both from a proactive and reactive perspective, particularly as a small team. So, yeah. Priory team, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, Alex, you might want to chip in, but no. So there was no negativity in terms of the work that was done around addiction throughout that campaign. What I would say is that when we talk to patients and patients support us with this work, that does involve quite a lot of careful management in terms of our involvement with them by supporting, but also the work we have to do with clinicians around that, because obviously it is a sensitive nature of subject. So while our relationships with the journalists over this have been really positive and a great understanding, and also the public sort of engagement on various media outlets, social media channels, is always, we find, very supportive. It's more probably the work we do behind the scenes that takes up a lot of the time in terms of the prep and the ongoing conversations that we have, particularly when we deal with patients. We will maintain those relationships, even directly from our own teams, aside from the treating teams, which is great because we do enjoy that, and it gives us that chance to have a bond, and that's really effective in terms of how we portray things. But yeah, that's what I would say in terms of no negativity from the coverage. Alex, is there anything I've missed or?
No, I think that covers it. I suppose I don't know if there's anyone else on the call from a healthcare background, but healthcare as a healthcare provider do support a lot of high risk patients, and so, you know, very sadly, sometimes people do die in healthcare, of course, and that can then lead to inquests and negative coverage. So negative media is part of our remit. It's slightly removed though from this campaign, which is very positive public health messaging, and but it's something we have to juggle alongside, the negative side with the positive campaigns we do.
There is one thing that is probably worth to. It wasn't really part of this work in terms of the proactivity, but there is sort of an ongoing discussion and debate around, you know, addiction treatment as a whole in the UK, you know, politically, and, you know, from a sort of patient perspective, that fragmentation of services. You know, we're involved with that discussion from a national perspective, and we didn't talk about it, we'll touch upon it in the presentation, but there obviously a lot of engagement work that goes on around how does the country unite to create a better system. And that is, you know, a really interesting area of exploration at the moment. And I think what the data has shown in terms of rising numbers, it shows that it is an area that needs more focus. So that can come with its negativity, but, you know, wherever possible, use it as a positive forum really for discussion about how does the system collaborate better, more effectively. And, you know, we're playing a role in that, which is really, you know, which is really important to us as well. So yeah, as well as sharing stories, but yeah, a bit long-winded, but hopefully some good insights.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt and Alex. Yeah, really alarming, those kind of increases, aren't they, in addiction for gambling, ketamine, etc. So quite daunting for a small team, I think. So we can see why he won that award. So thanks so much for that. I shall end it there by saying I think that's an incredible range of work. And I think it shows the challenges that comms teams across all the sectors up and down the UK are dealing with. So I think it's really impressive what our comms teams are doing. I think it's safe to say the comms industry is in good hands. The people that you've heard from today, you're doing incredible work. So thank you for what you do. And the final reminder, don't forget to enter the 11th annual UnAwards. They will open on the 1st of September. You'll have almost a couple of months to enter. And as always, most of you will enter in the final week. But I would urge you to enter. It's simple and it's free to enter. So please do that. Thanks again. Big thanks to Danielle and to Can for helping today. And we'll see you all again soon.